Hi, welcome to the Nail Ladies Show. We are the Nail Ladies.
Hey, I'm Gina. I own a bunch of hardware stores and I sell nails.
And I am Andréa. I own a bunch of nail salons here in the District of Columbia and surrounding states.
Awesome. So I think today we're going to talk about funding and metrics. So a lot of our listeners have asked us how we funded our businesses when we got started. And my business has been in operation for 22 years now, so funding was a long time ago. But I have banked almost exclusively with a cooperative bank, which is a local DC chartered bank, federally chartered bank that funds cooperatives, which is what I'm a part of.
And what does that mean exactly? Did you basically start with loans from that bank?
Yeah, so actually I should go back one step prior to that. The Small Business Administration is the funding arm of the federal government that gives banks a guarantee, essentially, if they fund a startup business without a lot of experience. And so because I had collateral, I owned a condo, so that I was able to use that as collateral to get the loan. A traditional bank was not willing to give me a loan at the time because I had no experience. And so they sent me to the SBA, the Small Business Administration, that did underwrite a loan, guaranteeing 75% of it if I failed.
Wow.
Yes.
That's kind of, is that now, you said 22 years ago, is that something that people have access to today in the same
Yes, it is still a funding arm, the same terms, a federally chartered program. I had the opportunity when I went from one store to two to get a traditional loan through National Cooperative Bank, and so I no longer needed that SBA loan. I still needed the collateral, though, so I still had to put up my house as collateral. I owned a condo that I put up as collateral. I probably put up the first business as collateral. I mean, you collateralize your life, but I was able to get funding for the second store.
Great.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a different story because I did not go through an SBA loan to start my first location, but I did sell everything I had and then some, and basically had to sign a personal guarantee to be able to sign a lease for a location. But this involved cashing out a 401k, selling a car, selling my house, racking up every credit card in just to the max, and really, the really bootstrapping it, and still signing a lease that had me as a personal guarantee, which is tough because if the business went under, that means that what I had left, which was pretty much nothing, was going to be
a very
fully
expensive
gone.
lease.
That's what you do. I think it takes kind of, to use the swimming pool analogy, just plug your nose and jump.
Yeah, and see what happens. People don't think about the legally binding agreements that you sign that are leases, that you can't just say, "Oh, I'm out of money. I'm gonna default on this lease." It doesn't work that way. I want to ask you a question though, because so many people do use credit cards to start businesses, and one part of me wants to say that's a terrible idea, don't do it. The other part of me really understands how it happens. But do you have any advice for someone who feels like that's their only option?
It's not ideal, for sure. I think that a lot of times, though, when you're opening a business, you are faced with basically one decision: how to move forward and whatever it takes, right? And I think that mentality is really important. So I always joke that if I could have sold a kidney, I would have. I probably mean that. And so what does it mean to actually have to go into credit card debt? It's not ideal. The terms are not strong. And so if you can find loans that are a little bit better, I always recommend that route. But at the time, I was not able to get an SBA loan. We tried, and we weren't able to be approved for it. So we thought, okay, what's the best route? Now, credit cards will only go so far, and also you have to start paying those minimum payments back right away. And if the terms aren't favorable, you're going to be in a pickle. So I think it's sort of your emergency sort of shoot. If you have to use a credit card, then you do. But if you can avoid it at all costs and really keep it for an emergency fund, then do so.
There are financial opportunities now through community development institutions, CDFIs, that will fund what are often considered high risk businesses.
Yeah.
We can argue about whether that's true or what that means. Folks who are doing impact investing, angel investors who are looking to fund female entrepreneurs, people of color, underrepresented in the financial picture at large. And so there are more, I think, opportunities now, at least that I'm aware of, than just credit cards and traditional banks for people who can't get bank loans or who want to go more of an investor route. When we started, we didn't want an investor. I mean, we thought of our bank as our investor partner,
Yeah.
but it just didn't feel right, at least in the very beginning, to have a partner when we didn't know how successful we would be.
Yeah, I think actually that's a smart sort of filter through which to run the start of a business, because if you are going to go in and try to create a vision for yourself, it's nice to only be accountable to yourself, in as far as the idea is concerned, right? Obviously, the funds you have to pay somebody back. But I think it is nice to not have sort of the opinion of others. You can take the advice of others, but I think if you're really going to double down and believe in something that you're creating, it is nice to be able to go at it alone. People can also do friends and family investments, which I know have their level of risk, but people crowdsource stuff all the time. Everybody's received a GoFundMe invitation to donate $20 here, $100 there to be a part of something. And that's an option too that people sometimes go to, and they just pull friends and family that want to all throw in, $1,000, $2,000 and believe in your vision, and you'll owe them something on the other side. But that's also an alternative.
That's good. That we definitely didn't have crowdfunding opportunities. I don't know about when you started, but it wasn't a thing. It was not a thing. The first store.
I think it's become quite common.
I think
even
so
for and it's a nice way for people to participate in your dream, and it does come with a little bit of sort of emotional weight, right? Because you're borrowing your friends' money to do something. But if there's a genuine belief in it, and if they're willing to go in sort of knowing the risk, then I think it's a neat way to go too.
What a lot of folks, they come to me and they say, I'm starting this business and I know exactly what I want to do. Here's my business plan, which you absolutely need when you go to a bank or want to talk to a funder, having that business plan. A lot of people don't get to the point where they're actually making money before they ask for money. And that's very important. A lot of investors at any level, or a lot of those programs, want to see that you've made some money. You have to be able to prove that you know how you're going to for banks. But if you talk to private equity or any kind of investment arm, oftentimes they will say, how much have you made so far? Shark Tank has sort of made this famous, like what's your revenue so far? But in real life scenarios, people want to know that you have actually made $1.
Right, which is really hard for first-time business owners, because when you're coming out the gate, you barely you all you're doing is spending. You have not sold a single widget, and so how do you prove to anybody, to any lender, friend or family, community bank, SBA, that you're worthy of that investment? So it is hard to do right out the gate, but if you can start small and then get a little bit of an infusion of cash, that sometimes is a good way to go too.
Yeah, no matter how small it is. All right, let's talk about some of these metrics. Tracking the health of our business is really important. So you got money. You started your first business. What did you do to make sure it was healthy after that?
It's funny. I walked into, when I used to work as a journalist, I filmed once in a health clinic, a rural health clinic in Kenya, in the outskirts of Nairobi. And the woman had a sign on her wall, this community health worker. She said, "In God we trust, all others must bring data." And it's a good line, and I never forgot it. And I think with the nail salon, we became data obsessed. We tracked everything. People walking in, not being able to get an appointment, we would track it literally with like just a clipboard, a white page, and we would track people who called and couldn't make it in, people who wanted to come in at 4 but we couldn't see them until 5. We just started gathering every single data point that we could find, because I think that was going to be telling the big story of our business. It's really easy to look at something and sort of be skewed by something that you observe to be data. But when you're not tracking it appropriately, you realize that you don't really have the full story. And the only way to really trust the story that you have is to have a robust data set to go with it. So we measured everything from what colors were being used to what colors were not being used on polish, how late people were showing up, to see if we were going to ever charge a late fee, how that was affecting our business. Today, we have a very robust internal dashboard that we've had created to track everything from customer satisfaction to ratings to 5 stars versus 4 stars to what people complain about to what people praise us about to what beverages are being requested more than others. I mean, we track everything.
And then do you do something with everything that you've tracked?
Well, this is the thing, right? Tracking and data without action is just trivia.
Useless.
It's really just trivia. It tells you, I mean, if you're not actually doing something with the data you're collecting, then it's just an exercise in futility. I mean, so what we do is we take the data that now we know is really good for us and that has served us well, and we churn it and we talk about it and we meet about it and we have metrics meetings with our entire leadership team every week to basically discuss the trends. And we put everything on a graph. We compare year on year, week on week, month on month, because you really want to be having a true story of what your business is.
I've met with some people over the years that have, dozens and dozens of numbers, and at bigger companies than mine, but way too many metrics, and you can get lost in it
100%.
or just like overwhelmed by it. And I was not. The joke in my company was I was not the CEO that mathed. Like I did not want to do anything with numbers. In fact, one of the best data points that we track now has to do with a time where I almost put us out of business. So I was overhiring, overpaying. I wasn't paying any attention to what we now call our sales per payroll hour. And it was a really important lesson that we could track all the numbers we wanted, but one, if we weren't talking about them, it didn't matter. Where they go into a hole in your computer.
Yeah.
And two, that if you want to affect your top line or your bottom line, you have to know which metrics you're tracking that make the most sense to get you there, if that makes sense. So for me, I was hiring too many people, which you could see if you're paying too many people too much money, it doesn't matter how much you're selling. Like, it doesn't match at the end. And maybe that's oversimplifying it. But as the CEO that didn't do math, I just didn't think about that. And my CFO didn't want to overwhelm me with information and really just wasn't talking about it.
Would you say that there's like the 5 things that every CEO should always be looking at, or they should determine that for their business and just always watch that very closely?
Yeah. So when this happened, when we realized I was about ready to bankrupt us, we realized that our top 2 expenses were like 75% of our expenses were coming from 2 sources: our cost of goods, which is the products that we sell, and our payroll. And so 30% of what we were spending our money on, it didn't matter if we weren't taking care of that 70%, and that 70% was only coming from 2 places. So what can I do? I can buy cheaper products or charge more, sell more, and I can figure out how I'm going to work on this payroll. And I wanted to pay people more. I wanted more benefits. I wanted more vacation hours. I wanted all of that stuff for my team, but that also meant I probably couldn't have as many teammates. And that was a real hit over the head for me, because I wanted to give all the people all the jobs.
All the things.
Yes, all the things. And so it was probably 2014 when we went through this exercise, when literally the CFO left the conference room where we were sitting, because I just wasn't getting what he was saying, that we were going to go out of business. Yeah. And that night we determined that we would very seriously track sales per payroll hour, and we would hire outside consultants who would help us with our pricing. Yeah. Our pricing, our staffing, and our just product mix in general.
Because there's some emotionality that comes with these decisions, right? Like, yes. you want to give all the things to all the people, but you also have to think about the sustainability of Correct. The business.
Well, I wasn't going to be hiring anybody if I wasn't in business. I mean, that's so oversimplifying it. Yeah. But you can kick the ball down the field, and you realize at the end of the field we would have had empty storefronts. Yeah. That's not what I wanted. I wanted storefronts full of really cool employees.
Yeah, it's a really hard thing to do, I think, also to just get to brass tacks with the numbers, because you think that you're watching things and you're like, well, but this is obviously the way we should be doing things, because it's working and because there's cash in the registers at the end of the day. But when you don't look at the full picture, you can be missing a lot. A lot.
We were at that time, I think, 2014, we were probably already a $27 million business, which is a lot of zeros for, a little business. But clearly it wasn't going to be enough.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah,
and you really think, well, we're a $27 million business. We can afford anything.
We can do anything.
Yeah, no, and what you don't realize is that you're bankrupting yourself. Yeah, I agree. What do you think are some of the mistakes that people make in tracking data and just pulling metrics from the businesses they run?
Well, I think you made the best point is, if you're going to track it, you need to do something with it, for sure. I think they don't know who to ask the right questions of. So, for example, do you need to hire an outside person? Is your bookkeeper or your accountant or your tax person the right person for your team? Do they understand your industry? I mean, we really have tried over the years to work with people who understand the hardware industry or the construction industry, the retail industry, but not retail like big box billion-dollar retailers, small size retailers like us that understand our limitations, and that's made a huge difference too. So I think knowing what to track and actually acting on it, and then knowing who to ask. Not all of us are going to understand internally what this means.
No, agree. And I also think for us, one of the things that have helped is that we essentially set strategy to metrics always. Anything that we're trying to do at the nail salon, we have the numbers to back up that decision of why we're going to pivot a certain way. You know, whenever a client makes a suggestion, unless it's a very easy, simple suggestion, we don't change a process based on the request of one client.
No.
But if 10 clients or 20 clients or 30 clients make a request, same thing for our team. If our team member says, oh, I don't like this uniform, we take that note, but we don't change uniforms based on the request of one team member. But if 10 say something, well, then we need to look
onto something.
Right? And so part of it, it's always looking for critical mass, decisions based on critical mass. How are you moving the needle according to, you can't please everyone, but the metrics will tell you a small percentage that you, or a reasonable percentage for you to make a change in your business. So for us, strategy setting is always a numbers game too. And not just because it's not revenues, it's numbers of, client retention, team retention, client satisfaction, 5-star reviews versus 4-star reviews. Why are people giving us so many 3-star reviews this week? What's going on here? Why is this technician getting 4-star reviews and 3-star reviews when they only used to get 5-star reviews? That's telling us there's something going on at home. So we use all this information to even lead HR conversations, to have discussions with our locations about everything from cleanliness to, we really do just kind of, scrutinize the data that we have so we can make decisions not just to course correct, but to really set the tone of the business.
I think everybody needs to do that. I think you're totally onto something with how you're doing it. One of the other things that we realized is that a solid B is an A+ in our business. And this is what I mean by that. We have a inventory metric that we track. It's very simple. If you go to the register and you look in the inventory system, if it says we have 9 hammers on the shelf and you go to the shelf, there are 9 hammers. That matches, right? Our goal is that is correct 80% of the time. And I don't know about you, but when I was in school, I didn't want to get an 80%. That's like I don't know, is it B minus?
It's a B,
it's a B,
it's
right?
Like
it's
a flat B.
It's a B. Do you ever want to be a B student? Well, I was always a B student, so maybe that was fine.
We will not be discussing my grades on this show.
That's a whole other conversation. My point though is that there is sometimes not room for perfectionism when you're talking about metrics. Yeah. And the follow-on research to us getting to this B says that we could spin our wheels and we could pay gobs of money, but getting to that 85 or 95% was not going to make us any more money. So don't do it. Don't spin your wheels getting there.
Interesting.
And that was also very important for us to know. So a solid B was really our sweet spot. And the stores in our, we have 13. So the stores that fall below that solid B, there's a set of actions that occur. The stores that are above that, that's fine. But if it starts to feel like it's getting too high, then perhaps there are other things that are slipping because the team is spending too much time making sure that number is higher than 80. So there's a real sweet spot there. And some of our other metrics, I would say probably run between a B and a B+. And that's okay because there's so much to do.
Well, also it's a fluid line, right? You can measure your metrics now and
Correct.
They will tell you something, and then 20 minutes from now they will tell you something else. So I think it's important to keep sort of some fluidity and understanding that this is going to be a variable number at all times. We have what we call the nail salon thermometer, which is our secret shop. I should send you in as a secret shopper. They would never, because you're such a diehard client, they'd never know you were doing a secret shop. But we have a form that's on people's phones. We send in a secret shopper, and they have to literally check off parts of the experience and all the touch points. And we ask that our team hit 92% on the thermometer because there's only so much that can be.
Yes.
We'd love to be 100%, but it's impossible, And the thermometer measures everything from are all the chairs tucked in? Well, if somebody just got up and you're in there measuring, well, all the chairs won't be tucked in. So there's room for error, and there's some wiggle room for things not being perfect. To your point about not having to be an A+ student all the time, that sometimes being a A- or a B is actually fine because we are only human after all.
So let's, I like this, the best and worst, we have these questions, best and worst money that you've ever spent as a business owner. And I think, I was thinking of my own answers, and some of them were kind of funny, to be honest, but I'd love to know best money you've spent and worst money you've spent.
Best money I ever spent was my first corporate hire. I was so nervous to make a hire outside of the locations. We have general managers that work in the locations, and they have some office hours every week. But I was so nervous to hire somebody full-time on payroll that was going to be, making a good salary to manage our operations. And I thought, boy, this is scary. And I remember a fellow business owner said to me, I said, once we open our third location, I'll make this higher because then I'll have enough cash coming in to hire it. And she said, no, you actually have it backwards. You need that person to be able to open your third location. And boy, was she right. I mean, so absolutely best money I ever spent was that. And having a little bit, again, plug the nose and jump in. And obviously you have some idea of how the metrics play out in this. You can't just hire somebody if you literally don't have the cash.
Right.
But you trust that you're going to be able to generate enough revenues based on that hire to justify it. And then worst, I invested at the very beginning. I had a business partner at this time, and we invested in a public relations firm that charged us a pretty penny, but did not deliver the goods. So that was a rough hire. But in fairness, we didn't give them enough time. We said, we have 3 months for you to just make a splash about us out in the local, and it's not enough. Yeah. And so we made a mistake to think that we could make a small investment and get the return on it. And in the end, it just flopped. So those were mine. How about yours?
Well, best is probably it's a little bit like yours, but the opposite. We raised our key prices by 10 cents a key, which 10 cents is no big deal.
Like
right?
key, like a physical key. Okay.
When we wanted to hire our first back office person, we wanted to promote one of our key sales associates to become a buyer. And we couldn't afford to give her a raise. And so we just did this crazy brainstorming session with our team one day. And somebody said, I think our keys are underpriced, for one, and we sell thousands of keys. Let's raise them by 10 cents. So we did. And we were able to hire our first buyer who worked with us for 10 years. Wow. So that was awesome. The worst, so I have a sad one and a funny one. The sad one is that we opened 2 stores that failed. And so those were very, very costly financial decisions. Yeah. I mean, both of them, going back to leases, we had to run for 10 years because we couldn't get out of the lease. And so they were very expensive. The reason I chuckle, though, is that the very second year I think we were in business, we went to a trade show, and there were these sort of hybrid motorbike, e-bike things. And this was in 2004. And there must have been electric bikes in 2004, but I don't remember being aware of any of them. But we saw them at the trade show. I super geeked out about them. We brought in 10 to our little teeny tiny storefront where we could barely store them. And they were a little more like mopeds, and they were pieces of junk. They were so bad. They were so bad that we couldn't even give them away because we were afraid they would be a danger on the streets. So I think the lesson there is that you have to take a risk as a business owner. Yeah. And we were willing to take a risk on a product that, I mean, it really flopped. 20 years later, we still joke about the bikes that Gina bought. But we tried, and we weren't afraid to try. And so that was...
But then the metrics told you not a good idea because you weren't moving them. So you're seeing this on your inventory, just stale, sitting there. So that, friends, is how you use metrics.
It all worked out. Somehow it just all works out. Yeah. So that's, yeah.
Well, good. Well, as we wrap up, let's talk about the biggest takeaway that you got from our conversation about money and metrics today.
Well, I think so. Again, I think we could talk for hours about how to get funding and how to manage money. And so this is really just the tip of the iceberg for anybody listening. I would love to hear what other people's questions would be specifically regarding funding. My biggest takeaway, I loved how you said hold your nose and jump in, because people are afraid to try things, and sometimes you just have to jump in.
I think it's kind of what it takes. I think this notion of being a B student, I think that perfection, maybe good enough is what is that saying? Good enough is there's the saying.
I don't know.
Good enough.
I don't know.
Good enough is this is good enough. Good enough is the perfection is the enemy of good enough. Or
that sounds.
Or
make that one.
This is the saying that is good enough for this to close out this podcast. No, jokes aside, I do think that we sometimes want things to be so perfect, so ready, everything 100%. And it's not going to be.
It never is.
Business is a fluid and is an exercise in fluidity, and I think you have to roll with the punches. And I think that kind of complements this, hold your nose and jump in, because you kind of sometimes have to accept that you're not going to be perfect, but you're going to be good enough.
Yeah. Great way to end it.
Great way to end it. So if you have any questions for us, the Nail Ladies, reach out, put them in the comments below, hit us up on our socials, and we'd love to address your thoughts or comments in a future episode of our show.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. Hammer.
Oh, yeah.
I need a nail file.